So far away, Lucas, are you ready to talk about a fact that everybody at home thinks they already know all the details to?
So they think they know all the details. How much of the details do you reckon the average person actually knows?
Well, this is one of those facts that everybody online knows the details to because they read an article 5 years ago that didn't actually do any research. So I thought I'm going to do some research and find out the actual details. Let's talk about Jack Churchill.
Yes!
The military career of the British soldier Mad Jack Churchill is something of an oxymoron because you can go online right now and find countless articles talking about him as if you've got no idea who he is, despite the fact he's one of the singular most written about soldiers who fought during World War II. Specifically, for anyone out there who doesn't recognise the name, he's the dude who supposedly fought in World War II with a broadsword and a longbow. So to avoid just repeating something that's been said dozens if not hundreds of times already elsewhere online, let's talk about how he confused the fuck out of people by frisbeeing his briefcase out of a window.
You're going to have to bear with me because I'm not really familiar with the story of a guy that went into World War II with a broadsword.
Well, Lucas, as someone who's been writing fact-based articles online for over a decade now, I am all too familiar with the story of Mad Jack Churchill. Specifically, I'm familiar with the story people online like to tell you. So this is one of those common bits of fodder for stuff like Today I Learned or suggestions, right? For example, when Fact Fiend first took off, it was one of the single most suggested topics to talk about of why don't you talk about Mad Jack Churchill, the guy who fought in World War II with a broadsword and a longbow? And my response to that was always, well, why do you want me to tell you about that? You already know all the details. Just remember those details and you've got it right?
Yeah, it's a weird thing to request, isn't it? Of tell me a fact that I already know.
It reminds me a little bit of a story told by the comedian Michael McIntyre, who was at a show once and was doing post-show Q&A, and a member of the audience raised their hand and he said, "Oh, hello sir, what would you like to know?" He said, "Well, in one of your other shows, you tell a joke about waiting for a bus and how while you're waiting for the bus, you walk to the next stop and other people got on your fake bus. I like that joke. Can you tell that joke again?" And Michael McIntyre had tried to explain to the guy, well, if you like that joke and you remember that joke, just remember the joke. I'm here to tell new jokes. Why don't you just remember that old joke if you like that joke so much? It reminds me a little bit of that, right? Of hey Karl, here's a fact you should talk about. Here's all the details. But you already know the details. Wouldn't you want me to talk about something you don't know?
No, apparently not. But I didn't realise that we were doing charity work today, Karl.
Just
calling
recycling.
Michael McIntyre a comedian.
That's what he writes on his Wikipedia page. I thought you were talking about we're doing charitable work because we're recycling, but that one's good too.
So I said to my tour manager, who is the sweetest, smallest Maltese man? He's a tiny, sweet...
Malteser.
And here's the thing, for years I resisted writing an article about Jack Churchill because, everybody already knows the story. Until I actually researched it and realised that the way you hear it framed online is wrong. So the story might vary depending on which source you consult, but the version of it you're probably going to hear from lesser fact-based websites or summations of it on Reddit or something is that Jack Churchill was a British soldier who fought during World War II. Alternately, it's claimed that he entered battle with a broadsword, sometimes it's written as a claymore, a longbow, and then on occasion, bagpipes. And there's even a little grainy black and white photo that is purported to be him storming the beaches of Normandy with those items. The thing is, all of that is bullshit.
I was about to say, if any of that is actually true, that's ballsy as fuck.
And here's the thing, it's one of those cases where the telephone game of history has taken something that is ultimately very interesting and then spun it off into something that's not representative of the actual reality of the situation. For example, it's often purported online that Jack Churchill scored the only longbow kill during World War II. Something that would get brought up to him in interviews of well, is it true that you're the only person to kill someone during World War II with a longbow? It's I wish that was true. I did take my longbow with me, but then a car ran it over on the third day I was there. And that's the thing. I think that's a way more interesting story. That he tried to shoot someone with a longbow, but then a car ran it over.
Of all ways to not be able to get your longbow killed during, like, a gun battle, right?
Yeah, I think it's way more interesting that he tried to do it, nobody stopped him, and then, like, just something ran it over. So there was a hit against his longbow. Likewise, the story about him going into battle with a sword is true. However, he never used it in battle. It was purely ceremonial. And in a similar vein, the story about him taking bagpipes onto the beaches of Normandy is not quite true, and the picture that is purported to show him running into battle with his bagpipes and his sword and his longbow, that was a training mission. And it's still impressive that he ran into battle with those things, but he wasn't storming the beaches of Normandy with them. But he did take them into battle.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, it's pretty impressive to just, at very least, I should say, use these things in battle, but maybe not necessarily, get all the way.
Well, the thing about, like, in regards to his sword, there's a very popular story online that he charged a Nazi position with his sword and single-handedly captured all 40 people there on his own, which is sort of true. And when he was asked to recount the story himself, he would always clarify, I wasn't on my own. It wasn't just me, there were other people there. Also, I didn't charge across no man's land with my sword out like a fucking idiot. I snuck up on them.
Everyone!
And admittedly, he was outnumbered 20-1, but he had the drop on a bunch of soldiers, and he also had a gun. It's just that he also had his sword on him at the time because he carried it everywhere he went. But the telephone game of history being the way that it is has resulted in that story now being, he captured 40 people on his own with a sword.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's just a grammatical error. He captured 40 people, with a sword. He just had a sword with him at the time.
And here's the thing about this story, Lucas. The actual reality of what happened, to me, is way more badass than the version that Reddit likes to tell you. Like, the version Reddit tells you is he charged the position single-handedly with his sword out and captured it. The real story is he snuck around, he captured one Nazi, who he threatened into dropping their weapon with his sword, and then he walked that Nazi around like a fucking dog, made them lure out their comrades one by one, and then captured that guy. And every time he captured a new guy, he got his allies to watch over them with a gun. And I think that's way more impressive, right? The fact he fooled the Nazis 20 times in a row.
It is way more impressive, but I almost in my head have got the image of, like, when you're playing like a stealth game like Hitman or Metal Gear or something, and you lure one guard over with the noise, or like in Assassin's Creed when you've got like the one death bush in the camp.
Yep.
And it's like, people keep walking over to the noise in that bush, and they never come back out. I'm going to go inspect the bush.
And that's basically what he did, 20 times in a row.
I'm going to find whoever did this.
Which I think is way more impressive, right? Because you only need to get lucky once if you charge a position and capture and surprise everybody there. You get to get lucky 20 times in a row and pulled it off. And he did do it with his sword. But he didn't attack anyone with his sword, he used it to threaten them. Because he knew that if he threatened a Nazi with his fuck-off giant sword, they'd be more likely to drop their weapon because they don't want to deal with a crazy person.
Yeah, it's very different, though, than the story of charging over no man's land, attacking everyone with a sword and winning.
Yeah. And it's frustrating because, it's not what happened. So it's like, it's literally rewriting history, but it also downplays the heroism of the other people present that day whose names history has not saw fit to remember. Like, he was there with his allies who helped him. They were just as important to capturing that position as he was. But the story only mentions him, and again, like, internet recollections of it in the telephone game of history has saw to it that those men do not get remembered, which fucking sucks.
It's like doing a group project and only one person gets credit.
Like, it's basically that, yeah. Like, one person got all the credit for the group project because they just happened to be wearing, like, the most flamboyant shirt that day. Even though everyone present was working towards the same end goal, and everyone there would give each other equal credit. That's one of the things that Churchill would correct when he was, like, giving interviews, and people would recount these, like, tall tales from his time at war. He'd always be like, well, they're partially correct, yes. Like, I did have a sword. I didn't use it to kill anybody. I also had a bow and arrow. I also didn't use that to kill anybody. I had my bagpipes, but that was because I wanted to have my bagpipes. I didn't play them storming the beaches of Normandy. I'm not an idiot.
I mean, it could be a British cheerleader with a bagpipes
I
charging
guess so,
in.
yeah. Well, that's the thing, like, he wasn't an idiot. And what makes this all more frustrating for me is that while I was researching this dude, I found out his life after the war was just as interesting as his time during the war, especially given that all the stuff everybody knows about this dude is just bullshit. For example, after the war, he decided, I'm going to take up surfing. Specifically, he wanted to take up river surfing. And he's known to have been the first person in recorded history to surf what is known as the Severn Bore.
And here, periodically, can be witnessed an amazing natural phenomenon, the celebrated Severn Bore. The bore itself is a wave about 2 to 3 feet high, but in the succeeding hour, the water may rise by as much as 10 feet.
That's pretty impressive.
And here's the thing as well, like, it was believed that nobody could do this because it's so dangerous. And when the danger was brought up to Churchill, he turned to the person and went, it'll be all right. He literally went, be right. He's like, this is really dangerous. I know, be right. That's exactly the kind of behaviour I expect from a man who, during World War II, would check if enemy anti-aircraft guns were empty and had no shells in them by pointing his face into the barrel and screaming down them. And if he heard an echo, he knew he wasn't armed. So he would literally check if anti-aircraft guns were, like, were ready to fire by sticking his head in front of it and yelling.
It's one thing checking if a gun's empty by, like, shooting it at yourself. But shooting an anti-aircraft gun at yourself by accident, that's got to just take it with you, right?
Like, and these are the kind of things that, led to his legend, and they built the legend of his life. And, like, it's... And you can see why, as well, if he's a guy who would check if guns were loaded by screaming at them. You can believe that, he also ran into battle with a sword, right? And again, it's the telephone game of history has exaggerated and just skewed what actually happened. But the funniest story from his life, and the one that I'm surprised I've never seen elsewhere online, because it made me laugh more than the other stuff he did, and it is that when, the war had finished and he stopped his surfing days, he begrudgingly got a boring office job with the Ministry of Defence. And there's not really much to say about his office job, but there is a lot to say about his commute to and from the office. And it's said that the people on that train would just be amused that every day Jack Churchill would get on, and he was a pretty well-known guy, he's a character. To use the parlance of the UK, it's like the guy was a character, and he was well known for his eccentricity. And every single day, Jack Churchill would just, at a certain point in the journey, open a window and frisbee his briefcase out of it. Every single day. And after about 2 or 3 weeks of him doing this, because the thing is, then he'd get on the train the next day with an identical looking briefcase, and then do it again.
Did he just have really good aim to get to, his back garden or something?
Lucas, you've got it in one. It turns out that someone eventually worked up the courage to ask him, what are you doing? He went, I worked out that we go past my back garden. And if I timed it exactly right, and he learned through trial and error that he could frisbee his briefcase into his own back garden and then go collect it when he got home.
And the thing is, I can't imagine that's more efficient than just taking the briefcase home with you.
We just thought it was funny. That's the thing, he thought it was funny, and it was trial and error. When he noticed he was going past his own back garden, he thought, if I throw it out of the window to go past my back garden, I won't have to carry it from the station. So that's what he started doing, and it became a sort of a challenge to himself. And he amused himself by not telling anybody that he was doing this. Until I said someone works at the course say, what are you doing?
How many times did he have to sheepishly knock on his neighbour's house and just be like, I left my briefcase in your back garden again? How'd you keep getting your briefcase in the garden, man? And
I found that story very, very funny, and I was surprised that I'd never heard it mentioned anywhere else online, considering how much people supposedly want to talk about Jack Churchill. I was it's surprised when I finally got around to researching the guy. It's one, all the stuff people tell me they know about him is bullshit, and the actual story is way more interesting, and the recollections of it downplay the actual heroism displayed by other people who aren't as remembered as he is. Also, the dude surfed on a giant surfboard and frisbeed his briefcase out of his window on the train. That's funny.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like this was a man just trying to find ways to make things more interesting for himself.
He was just a guy living his best life.
I will say, though, if obviously, those stories of him, charging into battle with a sword are, as you say, at very least embellished.
Greatly embellished, yes.
If you were one of his friends that you'd gone into battle with him, I would kind of go home and claim, oh man, you'll never guess, one of my mates went into battle with a sword.
Well, that's kind of the thing that also happened, right? It's not just people on the internet that have embellished these stories. Like, you know, of course, people recounting their heroism during the war are going to embellish it, right? There's an entire character who's based on that exact trope in one of my favourite sitcoms, Only Fools and Horses, where, like, their uncle who, like, you know, fought during World War II, he constantly makes up bullshit that he supposedly did during on the internet. But I will blame all of those, like, websites and other YouTubers who claim to be good at research who haven't properly researched these stories. All I had to do was read a single book. I found one book in which he's mentioned and immediately realised that every article I'd ever seen talking about him was wrong.
I'm waiting for a video rebuttal now that is...
From him.
Well...
From his ghost.
Carl Smallwood can't research and got all the facts in this video wrong.
Remember we had that once? Like, the only time we ever got a call-out video is when we did it was about Shaun of the Dead. Oh, Hot Fuzz, sorry.
Oh, really?
Where it's like the most difficult scene in Hot Fuzz was 2 seconds long, and it was the summation of that is that according to Edgar Wright, the director, the hardest scene in Hot Fuzz to realise was the 2 seconds they watch Point Break, because a member of the production team had to go and get permission from everybody involved in that scene, including Patrick Swayze and Patrick Swayze's body double, who was wearing a mask and is only seen from behind. And there is a direct quote in the sources for that video talking about how, from Edgar Wright, the director, noting how, yes, this was the single most difficult scene in the film to realise. Like, it's a direct quote from the director, and I think there was like some shitty podcast somewhere, like, tagged us in a call-out post of like, you didn't do your research, and in their call-out video, they have a thing on screen as they're talking about how wrong we are, saying, oh, after the fact we did our research and found out that Karl was mostly right, and still released that video!
There are a lot of conversation scenes in that film that are very simple. Mm-hmm. And 2, wasn't the hardest to film. They just shot 2 people sitting on a couch.
Oh, right.
Yes.
They should have said one of the more expensive to film or something like
Except,
that.
again,
it wasn't.
No one has ever said that it was.
Okay.
Do you remember this?
I don't remember this, no.
You were in the podcast when we talked about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, like, we talk about a lot of things. Yeah.
And I'm not going to say I am right about every single fact I've ever mentioned on this channel. I am not infallible, but I do contend that every script which I write, which every Fact Fiend video is based upon, is factually accurate to the best of my knowledge, and I am greatly proud of my research skills. That's why I've been paid to do this shit for a decade.
However, the format of the video is that maybe less than half of the video is the actual script that you've written, and the rest is just going off on random tangents, right?
Yes. And there are moments where I'm like remembering facts off the top of my head, and that's why we devise the system of having fact bars. So after the fact, we can like correct or clarify a statement that's made.
Mm-hmm. He's actually comes across as very likable and very casual, which is kind of weird considering how much of this video is word for word taken from the article that he put up on his website like a year before he made the video. Word for word.
Wow.
And I'd say that there's very few things we've ever gotten completely wrong in a video. And the few times where that's happened, the video has not been released. There's been like one case, and I don't remember which video it was, but there's one that I remember where after the fact, I checked my source and went, "Oh, this source it's a bit iffy." And I double checked and I found a more primary source that discounted what was said. So we just never released that video.
And I'm presuming over the years as well, like there's been more details released about certain videos that you would have done, like more people come out and speak about it after the fact, like after you've already made the video and put it out and stuff.
Which is common with like, the pop culture videos we've done where we talk about like moments in pop culture. Well, sometimes years after the fact, an actor involved in it will just reveal an extra bit of trivia about a scene. But I do recall when that happened and being greatly amused by, because I got tagged in it a bunch on social media. When I was watching it and it got to the part where they're saying Karl doesn't do his research, and on screen you have a disclaimer saying, "We checked and he was right."
No, afterwards, we did our research. Turns out Karl did do his research.
Yeah, in a video calling someone out for not doing it. And I was like, you couldn't write this. Well, at least, very least, they couldn't. Because they don't do their research. That still amuses me years after the fact. Because they're just like, oh, whatever.
Yeah.
That makes sense with Karl Smallwood, A lot of words on the man.
Yeah.
He does like words. He's not good with them, but he writes a lot of them.
And here's the thing as well, I don't think anything we've ever said in a video is all that important and required all that much digging. But I do contend that most everything we've featured in a video is at least somewhat obscure. For example, with this Jack Churchill thing. There are countless videos and articles out there talking about the exploits of Jack Churchill. Not a single one I looked at during my research, save for like the books that I got, like, you know, the quotes and the stories from, mention him frisbeeing his briefcase out of a window.
Yeah, because that's the thing, right? It's like, I can imagine just the voice of somebody in the back just going, well, if no article that you researched ever brought up this story, how did you find out about this story?
Yeah, that's saying nothing we've covered is entirely unique. It's just that the things that I do try to research are at least obscure as far as the internet is concerned. And I use the barometer of I used to write for websites like Cracked and Listverse and Top Tens. And if I'd seen it on a site like that, I didn't want it covered on FactFiend, because that means there's already another avenue out there that has a similar format, a similar tone, a similar style, that's already discussed this fact.
It is funny, though, seeing like several facts that I knew that we'd done videos on, then get like other articles written about them later down the line.
And that reminds me of when Bomber Guy released like his just banger video about plagiarism, which I recommend. Dude does way more research than I do. And I think the only time I've ever been directly tagged on Reddit is I've got an account I maintain on there just so no one can like impersonate me that I never use. And someone on like Bomber Guy's subreddit like was okay. I think I found some examples of plagiarism on this channel called FactFiend. And it was them half remembering that I talked about a fact in a video, and then after they'd seen that video, they saw that same fact on Tumblr. And the crux of their argument entirely hinged on the fact they'd seen the thing on Tumblr first, and seen my video after the fact. And they, at no point, while writing like a 2,000-word call-out post, checked the dates on either thing. Which, if they'd done, they would realise that the Tumblr post was written after the FactFiend article and video went live, and that it directly linked my video as one of its sources. But because they saw the Tumblr thing first and then saw the FactFiend video discussing it, they just assume that, well, the thing I saw first is obviously the first one made, right?
Obviously, yeah. That's how everything on the internet works.
And I remember that it's happened a lot on TikTok as well. I remember when I think to this day we get people just copying stuff we've said in FactFiend videos, and I would frequently get tagged on that on like the TikTok account I've got for FactFiend that I don't really check much anymore, of people saying like, oh, FactFiend, you ripped this off, because a TikTok creator would say something we'd said in a video.
Even though that video could have been like 5 years older than the TikTok.
Yes, but people go and check, like, you know, it's good. I applaud people for doing this. They hear a fact online, and they Google that fact to read more about it or learn more about it, and they would stumble across our video. The part I don't like is when they go into the comment section of our video on my social media and accuse me of ripping off a TikTok creator by travelling through time. I think I'd have better stuff to do if I discovered time travel than rip off a TikTok creator. I'd invent TikTok!
And that is the thing, right, is the amount of times where I've seen something on, say, TikTok, and I've gone, is this a fact or is this bullshit? And make sure I do the research afterwards to Google and like double, triple check it.
Yeah, and I have one more story about this that I want to share. But before that, Lucas, we have a second channel called Wiki Weekends, right? Where we don't do as much research as I do for FactFiend. It is just me and you riffing on a Wikipedia article or wiki on a character, a concept, or something from fiction that me and you happen to enjoy, correct?
Yeah, we let other people do the research for those videos.
And you know what? Wikipedia, pretty solid research standards. I know the joke is that you don't use Wikipedia as a primary source, which is, yeah, but you can use it as a jumping off point.
Yes, exactly. We use it as a way to form a discussion, not to say that everything on there is perfectly factual.
Do you remember the meme that Black Twitter came up with of reimagining Vision as a black dude? And he was called like Vishon.
I do not.
Did you not remember Vishon?
I don't remember it, though.
But the one that got me is when they like decide on Black Vision, they also started making fun of White Vision. And the one that absolutely fucking sent me, like my sides were in orbit when I saw it. It's like a screenshot of White Vision. He's got that awful sneer on his face. And just the caption underneath just says, "You seasoned my chicken." And it fucking killed me. Because it's just...
How dare you?
It's like just a sneer on White Vision's face. It's like, you seasoned my chicken. So yeah, Wikipedia can be used as a jumping off point, either for further research or for a discussion or familiarise yourself with a given topic. And that's what we like to do over on Wiki Weekends. We just go through a wiki on a subject myself or Luke is interested in and see what kind of conversation arises as we go through it. And sometimes you find some interesting snippets about a subject that you enjoy. Other times it's just the very matter-of-fact way that Wikipedia is written can prove to be quite humorous. She is proved to possess exceptional physical strength, being able to easily defeat several Nomus and break down a huge metal gate. Remarkably, she was able to momentarily incapacitate some of the high-end Nomus and sever one of their heads. And that's why you get like that fucking this is why I call her Rabbit Virgil, because she does the lunar phase. And it's one of the coolest things Virgil can do, and it's where he quits Beowulf, and he just does an overhead kick, but he spins like 1,000 times, a dishwasher. And she does that.
It's always one of those I've always said, and many people do say this, not my own original thought, that a really good way to research for, like papers and, essays and things like that is to go to Wikipedia and then use the sources that are linked on that Wikipedia.
Yeah, I'll always give props to Wikipedia. It's a great way to familiarise yourself with a topic. Like during university, if I was writing about, I don't know, German Expressionism, a good way to familiarise yourself with what German Expressionism is go to the Wikipedia article for German Expressionism, because the Wikipedia article is written with the intention the person reading it is not familiar with the subject at all. So it's just a really good place for familiarising yourself with the broad strokes of any given topic before you go on to more, advanced stuff, or more specific sources. But I did promise one more story, Lucas, and this feels very classic Fact Fiend, and I'm glad that I get to share this story. And it's a true story. I'm not going to name any names because I don't want people being harassed or anything on social media. People already do that enough to me. But many, many years ago, I met one of my exes because someone was ripping me off. You might be thinking, what? Well, it turns out one of my exes, they initially reached out to me because the person they were dating before me would tell them facts and stories. And they were amused by these facts and these stories. And similar to what we mentioned earlier, do you want to say, like, sometimes you hear something and go, that's interesting, I want to Google that and find out more about it, or double check, see if it is exactly as they said. They Googled one of the facts that their boyfriend at the time, their ex when they met me, told them, and stumbled across a Fact Fiend video and started watching the Fact Fiend video. And they realised while watching the Fact Fiend video that all the facts that their boyfriend had told them were just repackaged Fact Fiend videos. Further, and this is the bit that's really weird, they were also repackaging stories I told in earlier videos about my friends and family, as if they'd happened to them. So, in earlier Fact Fiend videos, I would tell, stories about, my family, my dad, my friends, stuff that happened in my childhood. This person was telling those stories as if they happened to them. And
it's so weird, man.
It really is. And the way I ended up getting together with that ex is that they messaged me on social media. Was like, hey, I've already heard all those stories told by someone else and I really like them. I thought I'd reach out and hit on the guy who actually come up with those stories and facts. I do wonder how many more people out there have gotten laid telling my stories and telling facts from my life. I want to know.
Let us know in the comments.
I think no one's going to admit to that, right? But you know what? You can tell us about, Fact Fiend stories that you've told, to friends and family. That's another thing I do get of people telling me that, I like to, repeat things I hear in your videos. The facts, not stories from your life, to impress my friends or to, just have something to say when I'm out and about. Which I don't mind, because that's the whole idea behind the channel. The intention behind the channel was to create content that would be akin to sitting in a pub with a friend and just talking some shit.
Yeah, I always like seeing the comments and, people talking to us on social media and stuff saying that, they've used Fact Fiend videos as a way to share cool facts with friends or family, or even when people say that they've used it as jumping off points for researching like homework for school or doing like presentations or anything to do with like education. It's always cool
I'm
to
all
hear.
on board with that. You know, the way I created all the articles and the scripts that Fact Fiend videos are based on is by taking the research of other people and then building upon it with my own thoughts, opinions, and commentary. That's how creativity functions, at least in the field that I happen to be involved with. The admittedly very, very niche field of writing comedic fact articles. But either way, thanks for watching. See you all next time.